connected anymore. It's just on the edge inside there. It's our connection card. It's how we get a record of your visit. It tells us who you are. And I promise you, if you are a guest, we do not come by your house unannounced. We want to respect your privacy. This is just so we can get your information and send you a card or an email in the mail or in your inbox and let you know how glad you are here. If you would also give us your prayer requests, we take those very seriously around here. Our prayer team will continue to pray for those. And I encourage you to mark them for the prayer team. But if it's something confidential, you don't want them to know, mark it confidential, and no one will see it but me. Okay? This morning, we're going to continue to worship. This morning, we're continuing our series, Auditions. We're going to talk about how God calls us to do unusual things sometimes, cast us in roles we may not want, but if we'll do what He asked us to do, we'll be blessed for doing it. We're going to first worship through giving and ask the ushers to come forward at this time. You can give with our app, or you can give by texting the number on the screen, or you can give through the old-fashioned way, put your money in an envelope, and they're about to pass the baskets, and we're going to pray and turn it back over to the band and continue to worship. Let's pray together. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity we have to worship together. I thank you for not only the fact that you're willing to come into our world, God, but by the way you did it, you sent a message to us. I hope as we look at that this morning, that we would continue to find our strength in you. That, Lord, we would continue to not only remember you at Christmas time, but we remember the why you came and the way you came and how it's all important. God, help us to connect the dots and to live every day with the message of Christmas in our heart. In Jesus' name we ask.
You guys can stand as we continue to worship this morning. For I spoke a word, you that you came down so that we may know what life is like with restoration, what life is like with healing, what life is like with purpose. For Lord, you are at work in each and every one of us. We thank you that during this Christmas season, you help us to refocus on you. It's in your Son's holy name we pray.
Amen. Every year at Christmas time, we sort of pick a theme. It's a timeless story, and most of us know it very well. And it's sort of the Christmas story is one of those places in history that everything kind of comes together. And so every year we sit around as a staff and we talk about possibilities. This year I brought a list of possibilities to the staff and then said, here's some ideas I'm thinking about where I'm preaching and where I'm going. How can we decorate? How can we get the worship center ready for that message and that series? And, this year the theme came together really nice. I appreciate Terry and her crew. They did a great job decorating in here this year and interpreting the theme. This was the first year that I was able to, not because I've never been able to, because I've never been emotionally able to let go of it. This is the first year I've been able to just give them the theme and step away and let them handle it. Didn't they do a great job? Terry, thank you very much. They did a great job. Each year I try to come up with themes. I have some ideas and I have some great things. This year we're talking about, God being our director, the fact that He's in control of all of history, and that Christmas is part of the bigger story that He's telling, and He's still telling that story today. He has roles for us. But in the Christmas story, He casts people in some roles that they may or may not have wanted. And they have to deal with that. And we have to accept the role He assigns to us. Are you willing to accept the role that Jesus auditioned you for? And that's sort of the theme we're running with this year. But one of the things I thought about and decided, I didn't even bring this to the staff, I knew it would probably get me fired. But I thought for like this service, I thought we could bring in hay and just scatter it all over the place. And I thought maybe, under the seats, we could just take manure and just stick it there so y'all can really smell and experience what the real first Christmas is really like. Because we think of Christmas as being this pretty, Christmas card looking scene. We think of it, but listen, it was a dirty, smelling mess. I don't think we sing the song Silent Night. It's one of my favorite Christmas carols too, but it probably wasn't a silent night. I imagine there were some arguments. I imagine there were some upset people. I imagine Mary was frustrated and anxious. I imagine Joseph was frustrated and anxious. I mean, I know when a husband and wife are frustrated and anxious, that doesn't mean well, right? And I imagine that they were no different than anyone else. Instead of the usual holiday decorations, I thought maybe we could do that, and it would put y'all in the frame of mind. So the problem is, if I had done that, some of y'all would have walked in and turned around and walked back out, right? And some of y'all would have walked in and found the deacons and had them escort me out, right? And it would not have ended well. We could have even brought a donkey down the middle aisle and let him do whatever he wanted to do, and that would have been a more accurate picture of what Christmas was really like for Mary and Joseph. It was not a pretty sight. It would have been awkward, but it was awesome all at the same time. Have you ever noticed in life that some of the most awkward moments turn into the most awesome moments? Those things that you would have never asked God to do, but that He did anyway. And then once you're past it, you look back and go, I would never trade that for anything. I don't want to ever go through it again, but I would never trade that for anything. Because of what you learn and what God teaches you through that. We've got to understand that Christmas is the time of the year where we reflect on one of the greatest moments in history. And the real meaning of Christmas is the fact that God didn't just come to our world. It's not that Jesus came to our world. He came into our mess. He came into a place that wasn't clean. I mean, I love this cardboard cutout. That's not cardboard. It's wood. It's actually wood that Daniel made for us. Chris said Jesus maybe needs a cell phone so he can take a selfie up here. But I love the fact that this depiction is probably not reality. First of all, baby Jesus was not this big. Mary could not have handled all that. Okay? But it was not this pretty. It wasn't silhouetted. This was real life. And it's important for us to understand the difference between stories we hear at Christmas time and the history and the real thing that happened that started it all. It's important for us to understand that Jesus was God, completely God, who became a man and came into our world born in a manger in Bethlehem because there was no place in the room for Him. There was no hotel room. There was no family willing to take them in. He was born in a barn. Now, we clean it up and we call the manger a manger. The manger was a feeding trough. I I mean, he was placed, he didn't have a cradle. They placed the one who came to save us all in a feeding trough. He came to earth in the most human way possible, the same way you did, the same way I did. He came by a birth. Jesus was born in a dirty barn because there was no place for him. God came into our world as a refugee. He came into our world born to a teenage mom who couldn't even afford the usual offering at the temple. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. They were poor. Joseph was a carpenter. They were newly married. They were having trouble with extended family. This is not what you call an ideal situation. Now, with that in mind, let's read the familiar story in Luke chapter 2, starting with verse 1. It says, after that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus declared that a census must be taken of the entire Roman Empire. This was the first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And all returned to their ancestral town to register for the census. And Joseph, because he was a descendant of King David, had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. He traveled there to the village of Nazareth in Galilee, from the village of Nazareth in Galilee. He took with him Mary, his fiancée, who was now obviously, notice that word, pregnant. And while they were there, the time came for her baby to be born. And she gave birth to her first child, a son. And she wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Not only is this not ideal circumstances, but now they have to go pay taxes. How many of y'all love to pay taxes? Not only that, they can't do it online. They can't mail it in. They can't just fill out the forms. They've got to travel. Ladies, do you want to travel when you're about to give birth? This is not a great timing. You would think that God, who's in control of all history, you would think the director of all things, could arrange this a little better. Wouldn't you? I mean, if you're Mary and Joseph and God's told you this is his son, this is the Messiah, this is the child that is going to save the world, you think things might have been just a little easier. Several hundred years before this even happened, the prophet Isaiah actually told us what was going to happen. He said, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, a virgin will conceive. That's unusual, right? And she will conceive a child, and she'll give birth to a son, and we will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. This is the story of how Jesus came to here, to live with us on earth. Everything about it seems like a picture of poor planning. Everything, listen, it's pretty for us, and we have the pageants, the kids look cute dressed up, and we love the cutouts of the wood, and we love the star, and it sparkles and all that, and it seems like fun to us, but I want you to understand, if you were in Mary and Joseph's position, if you were in the position of the people involved in this, you would look around and go, what is God doing? You would look around and be very confused. If God is going to send Jesus on a rescue mission to save you and me, I personally can think of a lot of different ways that he could have done it. Now, if I were God, now let's bring on the front end. All y'all are glad I'm not, right? But if I were God, I can think of a better way to do this. You know, he chose Mary and Joseph as his parents. Mary was just a poor teenage girl. Joseph was a poor carpenter from a no-name town. You know, why did he do that? He could have at least waited till they got married. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Don't you think that they could have provided for Jesus better if they'd been a little more stable, had a better environment? You know, if Jesus were born today, he'd be in trouble. CPS taking him away. I mean, this is a bad situation. They at least could have kept the gossip down if they'd been married when Jesus was conceived. But no, it didn't happen that way. And why this road trip? Mary is 9 months pregnant. You know, and by the way, Mary didn't travel to Bethlehem in an Escalade, you know, or even a minivan. At best, she's riding a donkey. More likely, she's walking, which I personally think might have helped induce her labor. This is not a good situation. And why is there no room in Bethlehem for Jesus? Seems like on the top of the list of things God would plan out would be a place for Jesus to be born. A place for him to stay. No room. Understand, it's not just there were no hotel rooms. This is Joseph's ancestral home. This is where his extended family is from. Now, if you showed up at your extended family's house, do you think you would find a place to sleep? Do you think if you had your pregnant wife with you and you showed up and you go, we need a place she's about to give birth, can you help us? Do you think you might take them in? And the Bible doesn't tell us this, but I sort of envision Joseph and Mary not only knocking on the doors of the hotels, but knocking on cousins' houses, and maybe grandparents' houses, and maybe uncles' houses, and they see him standing there with his pregnant fiancée, you know, you can't stay here. I want you to understand the reality of how awkward this first Christmas was. I wonder if there were relatives that turned him away. And again, the feeding trough. Why a feeding trough? The Messiah comes to save the world, and he has nowhere even to lay his head. He's sleeping in the very place where the cows just had their last meal. It's not sanitary. It sounds ridiculous, yet that's how God chose to enter into our world. So here's the question I want us to grapple with today. Here's the question I want us to wrap our mind around. If God really is God, which I believe he is, and if God can do anything he wants to do, because that sort of defines him as God, why did he choose to enter our world this way? Did he do it so we'd have a pretty Christmas story? Did he do it so we could have songs and so we could include animals in the Christmas pageant? If God's going to send Jesus to earth on a rescue mission, again, there are a number of different ways he could have done it different. And I know God knows more than I do, but my mind wonders about this stuff sometimes. I wonder if he could have changed a few details. I wonder if Jesus had been born, maybe not in Bethlehem, maybe instead of Bethlehem, this podunk town that nobody ever deals with, maybe, if Bethlehem's one of those places that you drive to, if you blink, you miss it, What if he was born in Rome? Rome was the military and the political capital of the world, right? They had conquered the whole world at this time. We talked about it a few weeks ago, how they built the roads and then the whole world was at peace because Rome was ruling over them all. Just imagine if Jesus had been born in a palace in Rome instead of a manger in Bethlehem, instead of a barn in Bethlehem. Think about the opportunities. If he graduated from Rome High School, his opportunities would have been so much greater, right? He would have resources. He would have all kinds of things available to him in Rome. He would have connections. And that would have been a great thing. Or forget about Rome. What if he had been born in the religious capital of the world? What if he had been born in Jerusalem? Now, just picture this. He could have been born in the temple in Jerusalem. Now, that would have sent a clear message to everybody in the world. This is the Messiah. This child is born in a temple in Jerusalem. He must be the Messiah. Instead, he spends 3 decades trying to convince people who he is. And I wonder, what is God's plan? What is God doing? He could have actually been born in a better situation. And instead, he spends decades trying to convince people. Even his own family doesn't believe he's the Messiah. And his brothers don't believe. They, at one point, we studied this in the book of Mark, if you come on Wednesday nights, they think he's crazy. They come to try to drag him home. They think Jesus has lost his mind. They do not believe he's the Messiah, a lot of them, until after he rises from the dead. That's kind of hard to turn down, right? And so then James and then several other of his brothers, Jude and some of the others, begin to say, I think he might be the Messiah. And they become leaders in the New Testament church. Why a silent night in Bethlehem? Wouldn't it have been better to have a big spectacle in a bigger place? To have a bigger deal made out of Jesus' entrance into a world? Jesus is coming into our world. He's going to save us. Why did this story just doesn't make sense to me? Jesus is the star, right? He comes to save us all. And how many of you know when you go to a play, when the star comes onto the stage, they make a grand entrance, right? Usually, a lot of times if you're watching a play, if there's a famous star, they walk on the stage, and all they have to do is walk on the stage, and people just applaud, and they have to wait for him to continue to play. That didn't happen for Jesus. He came into our world, and no big entrance. In the theater, when you make an entrance, it's important. And I know that this was real life and not the theater, but our culture, it's not just the theater. We have to learn to make an entrance, right? How many of y'all make an entrance when you come into a room? Look at all the liars. Look around the liars next to you. In our culture, an entrance is important. We see this in the world of sport, right? I think of Muhammad Ali. How many of y'all remember Muhammad Ali? Yeah, look at all the old people in the room, right? Muhammad Ali. Look like a butterfly, sting like a bee, right? Listen, when he took the ring, he did it with style. When he was, every fighter since then has done this, but he came in there and he talked and he rhymed and he danced around and he sort of invented the word trash talk, because he just had this air about him. He was the biggest, baddest man in the world, and he knew it, right? And he made sure everybody else knew it. And like I said, every fighter since Muhammad Ali has sort of taken up that field. Not even in the world of boxing, but think about tennis. How many of y'all know Serena Williams? I mean, when she takes the court, she takes the court. And she owns the court. She takes it in a way that she comes out, she's all fired up, and she'll argue with the referee. It doesn't really matter. Serena is going to let you know she's there. I thought about, I was watching, my brother-in-law and them were staying with me. He and I watched a little football yesterday. I thought, every single football team that takes the field, whether they're good or not, right? They take the field like they are champions of the world. They run out through banners and firework goes off, and the UT goes to the power tee, and everybody gets a little flutter in their heart and goes, oh, right? We're about to lose, but oh, that's awesome. They know how to make an entrance. And it's important, it's important that you know how to make an entrance. It's important that you know how to do that. I thought about Cousin Eddie when he takes the driveway, right? He comes in there, and he takes over, and he knows what's going on, and some of y'all didn't think I was going to get it in. For those of you that are guests, I made it my goal this year that every message would include a reference to Christmas vacation, and I am now 5 for 5. If I get it in Christmas Eve, we'll have completed the whole cycle. But he does, though. He owns that driveway. Hope you didn't do all this for us, Clark. He is excited to be there. He thinks that he's running the world. And actually, speaking of, the reason I did that this year, some of y'all think it was just for fun. That's to get you to listen. See, last week, we didn't have our reference to Christmas vacation at the very end of the message. And some of y'all were like, I learned this trick when I was a youth pastor about 10 years ago. There was Leon, are you back there? Yeah, Leon. Kurt Mullen. Some of y'all know Kurt. He grew up here. He's married, moved off now. But Kurt used to get Kurt to listen really well to my messages, I would tell Kurt if he would come early, sometimes most of the time actually he was there early, I'd say, Kurt, give me any word you want to, and I'll work it into the message. And he'd give me all kinds of things, bowling ball, work bowling ball in there. He said, septic tank or whatever. He'd give me some weird word. And by the end of the message, I'd work it in. What he didn't realize is that made him listen. See, y'all been tricked this Christmas season. Y'all listen to every message. You maybe just listen for an illustration. You might pick something else up. But the way you make an entrance, here's the point. The way you make an entrance says something, doesn't it? The way you come, see, some of y'all are thinking, well, I'm not a boxer and I'm not an athlete, and, I'm not Cousin Eddie. And you're thinking, you think maybe that you, but you do the same thing. How do you go into a job interview? How do you act on a first date? When there's a room full of people you've never met before, are you aware of how you carry yourself and how you walk in that room? So we all know how to make an entrance. And you're going to walk in, you're going to pay attention, because you know that you don't have a second chance to make a first impression. And see, Christmas is the story of how God chose to enter our world. So the question again is, why did he do it the way he did? Because we know God knows everything. And I was just kidding earlier, God's way is always the best way. So the way he entered the world was important. The way he entered the world was the right way. So there has to be a reason for why he did it the way he did it. Isn't it interesting that some people say, well, maybe God didn't know how to make an entrance. Well, I know he knew how to make an entrance because he knew how to make an exit. And if you know how to make an exit, you know how to make an entrance. Think about his exit to this world. He's walked out of a tomb after they've killed him. He spends 40 days walking and talking on this earth, teaching more than 500 people at once, letting them know I'm still alive, I'm back, this is great. And then he gathers his disciples on this mountain, and he begins to teach them. He gives them the Great Commission, go into all the world, teaching them all the things I've taught you, and baptizing them in the name of the Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit. And wherever you go, I'll be with you always. He gives them the Great Commission. He tells them to carry the message of Christ around the world, tells them to make disciples, which means don't just tell them about me, teach them what I've taught you. And then he just ascends into the clouds. He just floats up. Now that's awesome, right? What if he come the same way? What if he just floated down to the full-grown human and said, I'm here. I'm going to fix this mess. That would have been an entrance. That would have gotten our attention. That would have been impressive. That would have been dramatic. But he knew how to make an entrance. And he chose to do it this way instead. So the question is why? And that just leads us back to an age-old question that people ask over time, over and over again. If God has the power to do something, why doesn't he do it? If God has the power to do something, why doesn't he do it? And maybe you've asked that question of God in your own life. Some of you maybe very recently. Some of us, I would include myself, have asked God, why are you doing this the way you're doing it? Have you ever been, am I the only one that doesn't always understand God? Let me give you the short version of this. His ways are higher than our ways. Let me translate that to the Paul Riddle version. We're too dumb to understand what God's doing. We don't always get what he's doing. I look back over 2018, and maybe you can look back over 2018, and there are some things that you went through that were really hard. There's some things that maybe some of you, and I know your stories, some of you have gone through things that you're like, I don't understand what God's at work doing here. And maybe there's some of you who would say that, God, I don't know. I know you have the power to do something about this, and you fill in the blank, whatever this is. And you say, I know you can, so the question in your mind is, why don't you? And some of us are dumb enough to ask God that question out loud. I don't think that's dumb. I think God can handle our questions. I think we can say, God, why didn't you fix my marriage? God, why didn't you heal my child? Why didn't you save my job? Why didn't you protect my family? Why didn't you keep that person from leaving? Why don't you just remove my anxiety? You fill in the blank. Why didn't you? You had the power to, so why didn't you? Have you ever asked that question? The tension for us, if we're really honest, the tension for us when we get to this question is we want a God who's powerful enough to do whatever he wants to do. We want a God who can intervene in our lives whenever we need him to. But we really don't want a God who's so powerful that he intervenes in our life whenever he wants to. We want a God who will do what we need him to do, but not necessarily do what he wants to do that we may not like. And the truth is, God is God. He still has all power. He still has the control. That's the problem. We want power. We want control. And so we want to take over the director's chair. We've been talking this whole series. Who sits in that chair? God. He's the one in control. He's the one who knows how the story should go. God knows how to make an entrance. And when we take over the director's chair, we mess up our life. Now, we don't mess up his plan because he knew we would do it, and because he has other people, and because he knows how to work all things to the good of those who love him or called according to his purpose, right? But we can mess up our involvement. We can miss blessings by not being obedient and faithful. We can cause ourselves heartache and pain if we try to sit in his chair and take his job. God will not force his way in our life. I want to give you good news this morning. God's not going to take over your life. He's not going to force his way in. Here's the good news. He won't take over your life, but he won't abandon you either. That's what the Christmas story is about. God came into our world. The prophet Isaiah is saying that when he gives us, when we give him the name Jesus, it means God with us. That simply means what it says. God decided to come be with us. When you are in those really painful moments, when you want to tap out, when you want to give up, when you don't really understand what God's doing, God isn't going to swoop in and take over. But he's not going to abandon you either. Instead, he's going to do what's best. He's going to be right there with you. And if you let him, he'll lead and guide you through it. Not because you have the power to control God, but because God gives you a choice. The clue to unlocking and understanding why God came to the earth the way he did, why he made this very quiet entrance into the world instead of some grand spectacle, can be found in what the author of Hebrews says to us. Here's what he says, chapter 4, verse 14. So then, since we have a great high priest, the high priest is someone who connects us to God, someone who helps us connect in a real way, who has entered heaven just as the Son of God, and led us firmly to what we believe. Our high priest, listen to this, this high priest of ours understands our weakness, for he faced all, not some, all the same testings that we do, yet he did it without sin. So let us come boldly to the throne of grace. There we will receive his mercy, and we will find grace to help us when we need it most. See, God came down to our level. He came down to our world. He understands every single thing that we go through, every single emotion that we have. He can relate to it. And he didn't have to come to our world to understand us, because he knows already. He came to our world so we would know he understood, so that he could demonstrate his understanding. He's been through all the emotions that you're going to experience. He can sympathize when you're going through whatever you're going through. Whatever you're going through right now, he can sympathize with that. Jesus knows what it's like to be hungry. He knows what it's like to be thirsty. He knows what it's like to feel tired. He knows what he knows the pains of adolescence. He knows what it's like to have family and friends turn against you. He's experienced those things, not just because he knows intellectually, he's emotionally experienced those things. He knows what it's like to wake up and just not feel like getting out of bed. He has faced the ups and downs, and here's the point of Christmas. He gets it. He gets it. He's been there. Because of that, we have confidence that we can actually approach him boldly, and that we can know how he's going to respond. You know, when a kid is scared and they come in mom and daddy's room, they come up to the bed, right, and they want to get in the bed. How many of y'all have kids that do that? Do they jump in the bed immediately, or do they tap you on the shoulder and wake you up first? How many of y'all kids are kind enough to wake you up? Okay. How many of them just jump in? That's what I thought, right? Most kids just jump in. They go, dear Father, I hate to awaken you from your slumber. No, they feel comfortable enough just to get into bed with you because they're comfortable. That's how we can approach God. Not because he doesn't have the power, not because he's not great and awesome. I don't know why your kids are British, but that's the side. It's because they feel comfortable, right? They can just connect with you in a real way. And we know how God is going to respond to us when we come to him. He's going to respond with grace and mercy because he gets it. Because he's been here. Because he's experienced life. This passage says that you and I have a Heavenly Father who cares enough to come into our world and experience every experience that we're going to experience. We can approach him as often as we like, as boldly as we like, knowing that when we do, we will receive grace and mercy. We'll receive grace. In other words, he will give us the things that we don't deserve. And he will receive mercy. In other words, he will withhold some punishment that we deserve. He'll keep us from experiencing some negative things that we deserve because he loves us, because he forgives us, because he came to this world not just to experience our world, but to save us from ourselves and from our own sin. And because he did that, he has the power to forgive that sin. And he has the power to intervene in our life. The reason why he came is super clear. We all know why he came. He came to tell you and I and to show us how much he really loved us and to save us from our sins. The reason he came the way he came was because he wanted to break the power of sin in our life. And he wanted to break the power of pride that held us back. He came to reconcile us, to reconnect us with our Heavenly Father. That is so important. So why did he do it the way he did it? Oftentimes we overlook the fact that God wants to step into our lives. He wants to come into our experiences, and he does it in subtle ways. When Jesus wants to come into your life, usually he doesn't just, there's no, Mary had an angel that appeared, right? Joseph had the dream, the wise men had the angel. We don't have that. God can still do that if he chooses to. But I found in my life, most of the time, he just speaks in simple things. He speaks through his word. He speaks through people. He doesn't get flashy. He doesn't overwhelm us with force. God came in a silent night in Bethlehem, and he still does that today. He still does that today. God usually comes in the small moments in our lives. He wants us not to be overwhelmed by his presence. You've probably been there at some point or another where you needed a word from God and you're looking for a great big sign. And I want you to realize that God doesn't always give you a big sign. Imagine some of you today would like that, wouldn't you? You'd like the God to give you a big sign. You'd like an email in your inbox every day, from God. Here's the truth. If you got an email from God, you wonder what idiot sent you an email from God. And if you got the sign and wonder, here's what I know most of you would do. You would start to think, what else could this be? God knows us, and he knows that we need not to be overwhelmed by that experience. Now, if you got an email and you figured out that it really was God, you would freak out. God's tapped my email. This is not good, right? You would think, oh my goodness, what have I done? Have you ever met a celebrity? How many of y'all met celebrities? When you meet a celebrity, did you go up and talk to them? Did you spend time with them? Or did you kind of stay across the room? I had a group of teenagers one time. We went to Nashville. We were at Slotsky's Deli. And there was Trisha Yearwood. What was the other country singer that was in there? I don't remember. Some guy's country singer. I don't listen to much country music. I don't remember who he was. But the teenagers were like, oh my goodness, that's Trisha Yearwood. Oh my goodness, that's so-and-so. And there was this girl, Trisha Ray, and she really wanted to approach them and get an autograph, that sort of thing. She was I'm an idiot. So I just walked over and said, hey, you're Trisha Yearwood, right? She goes, these kids would like to get an autograph. I brought Trisha over there because she was a big fan. And she said, my name's Trisha too. And she just answered. And then later, we got in the van, she just stopped talking. She stands there in front of this person she wanted to talk to and couldn't say anything. She just, so good to meet you, right? And then she gets to the van, I just met Tricia Yearwood. I think she likes me. I'm like, oh, because she knows you, because you didn't say anything to her. And here's the point. If we can be overwhelmed by the presence of somebody who sings a country song, how much more overwhelmed would you be if you stepped into the presence of God Almighty? You know, I always laugh when people tell me, when I get to heaven, I got some questions for God. I'm going to ask him why, and I'm like, you are an idiot. Because the truth is, every time we see someone enter the presence of God in the Bible, they fall on their face. They don't have any questions. Because his presence is overwhelming. If a celebrity, if an athlete, if an author, or somebody that we look up to in life can cause us to have this speechless wonder, what do you think the presence of God would be like? If a human being can do that to us, you know, imagine what it would be like to step into that presence of God. Matter of fact, there's this guy in the Old Testament named Moses, and he actually asked God, I want to see your face. Oh, God, I want to see your face. Look what God, his response was. Exodus 33, verse 20 and following, it says, you may not look directly at my face. No one may see me and live. That is serious. Can you imagine being able to say to somebody that you know, you can't meet me, if you met me, you would die. I mean it, you know, it's like serious here. The Lord continued, look, stand near me on this rock, and as my gracious presence passes by, I will hide you in the crevice of the rock and cover you with my hand until I pass by. Then I will remove my hand, and you can see me from behind, but my face will not be seen. I just have this mental image, and this is just a stereo in my head playing weird movies, but I have this picture of God putting him in the rock, and covering with his hand, and walking by and uncovering his hand, and Moses turning around, you know, he's had God's hand over his face, so he's got this great tan, except for one little hand print on his head, you know, and he sees the backside of God. He glows. The Bible tells us he glows. Can you imagine experiencing that? He basically says that if I were to step into your life, it would overwhelm you so bad that you would literally die. God says, if you see me, your heart wouldn't be able to take it. As a matter of fact, if God stepped into our lives, we would have no choice. If He's stepping in all His glory, if He had entered the world the way He deserved to come, we would have no choice but to worship. Our heart would be involved. And the reason God did what He did was He wanted to give you a choice. He wanted to give me a choice. He wanted us to worship Him out of our love and out of our choice, not because He is who He is. Jesus came the way He did because God has no interest in forcing us into His love. He invites us into His love. Make sure that you're choosing Him. This Christmas season, make sure you're choosing Him. And also make sure you're choosing and rejecting Him based on Him. Not based on your messed up image of Him. See, some people have this image of who they think God should be, and it's messed up. They think God should be this person who does what they want Him to do. And a lot of people have messed up images of God. That's why the people in Bethlehem missed Him, didn't realize that He was the Messiah. That's why the people in Capernaum missed Him, because they didn't realize that He was the Messiah. That's why the people in Jerusalem didn't understand He was the Messiah. They had this messed up image of who the Messiah would be. They thought the Messiah would be this political leader to come save them from Rome. That's not the case. Some people's image of God has gotten messed up because they live around messed up people. You know, I know that there are people that I grew up with, and people I grew up around, people who went to church, but didn't really live a life that indicated they went to church. There are people that I looked up to who let me down at one time or another. There are people who claim to know God but didn't act very godly or gracious. There are people who claim to follow God, but their life wasn't very Christ-like. There are people who claim to be saved by the grace of God, but never would give anybody else any grace. And I know that some of you can relate to that. I know some of you have been around Christians who don't let God run their life. They decide they're going to take the director's chair. And when you're around people like that, it messes up your image of God. If that person is someone you think of as a Christian, and they don't live a life that honors God, that can influence your view of God. And maybe that's who you are this morning. Maybe some of y'all are here, and you haven't been here since Easter, and you just come to Easter and Christmas. First of all, we're just glad you're here. And I hope that you're here to worship God, and I hope that if you're just here because Mama made you come, then that's fine too. Because God has a reason for you being here. But maybe that's where you are. Maybe you find it hard to believe God because of the people that claim to believe God. And I want you to understand, I genuinely get that. I understand that. I want you to know that there are people who will let you down, and I'm one of them. Here's the truth. All people will let you down. People are people. I will have let people down. And I know that as a pastor, sometimes people look at me and go, I don't know about this God thing. If he's like God, please don't judge God by his disobedient children. Please don't judge God. Get to know him before you reject him. And those of you that are parents, do you always want to be judged by your kids? Have your kids ever embarrassed you? Have they ever not done what you would have preferred them to do? Bear in mind, please don't judge God by your limited view of him based on what you see other people doing. Here's a few questions I want you to consider. What is your picture of God? How do you see God? There's all kinds of ways people picture God. When you visualize him, how do you see him? You see him as the sky up on a cloud. What is your picture of God? Here's my next question. It's a little layer deeper. It's a little bit deeper, and I want you to think real hard and consider this. What kind of God would you truly trust? What kind of God would you truly put your trust in? A God who takes control of your life, would you trust that kind of God? Would you trust a God who stays in heaven and shouts advice to earth? Would you trust a God who commands from far away and never gets his own hands dirty in your life? Would you trust that kind of God? Would you trust a God who's waiting to condemn you, waiting for you to mess up so you can throw a lightning bolt and zap you? Or would you trust a God who you believe in and he knows what he wants, but you mess up and don't always do what he wants, and so he judges you and he condemns you and he punishes you for your behavior? Would you trust a God who understands you, and even because he doesn't understand you, he doesn't choose to relate to you? He says they've got the Bible, they have the prophets, let them come to me their own way. Would you trust that kind of God? Would you trust a God, as Isaiah put it, would you trust a God who came to be with us? So that's the kind of God I can trust. A God who would lay down his crown. A God who would take off his robes and enter into our world. See, here's the truth. God doesn't have to be a good God. He just chooses to. God could have been an evil God, and we would have no choice but to worship him anyway, because he'd still be in full control of all things. We get to love God because he loves us first. Like we talked about a few weeks ago, would you trust a God who also had a family who was messed up, just like yours? A God who had a prostitute in his family, a God who had a liar in his family, a God who had an adulterer in his family. Could you trust a God like that, who chose to enter into your world, not just in a perfect way, but in a way where he lived perfectly in the middle of our imperfection? Would you trust a God who wants to get into your life and let you know that he understands what it's like to have a friend turn against you and betray you? A God who you can trust. That's the kind of God I want. And here's the beauty of it. That's the kind of God I have. I have a God who knows what it's like to suffer because he did it with us. Would you trust a God who walks with you in the middle of the thing you're struggling with right now? Would you trust a God who not only understands and not only came and lived on earth and went back to heaven, but sent his Holy Spirit to live inside of your heart and guide you through this? See, that's the kind of God I want to trust. That's the kind of God that I can believe. He knows what it's like to be hungry. He knows what it's like to be poor, misunderstood, discouraged, misrepresented, exhausted, defeated, lonely. Have you ever been lonely in a crowded room? I think Jesus understands that. I think he understands that. Would you trust a God who came to our world in its messiness, in a normal, everyday, painful birth just like your mama had? You see, God loves loves us so much, he wanted us to know that he gets it. He understands your pain. He did our life the same way we all do life, but he did it without sin. He did it perfectly. And because of that, we can confidently say, he gets it, and I love him for it. He knows my struggle. He says, I've been there. That's the God that I can trust. Not just believe in, I can trust him. If God were to come in all his glory, it would absolutely overwhelm us. If he'd come, even if he chose Bethlehem, and I know the angels popped out to the shepherds in the field, but if he let the whole world see who he was, if the angels had made the announcement to the entire world, it would not have been the same. God's plan was perfect, and when God entered the world in that small, everyday way, it showed us that he can relate to every possible way. He can relate to our life. And that's why his name is Emmanuel, God with us. I want you to understand, God wanted you to, he didn't have to, he chose to do it this way. A friend of mine, his wife was cleaning out their closets and found his old, how many of y'all remember what a picture gallery bank is, right? It is like this. It's an old ratty bank, and it was rusted, and she was about to throw it out, and she goes, oh, that's my childhood memories, don't give it out. How many of y'all pack rats, right? So don't throw my stuff out, I remember that. She was, it's rusty, it's not worth anything. He said, well, it's sentimentally valuable to me, and I believe it might be worth a little something. And she laughed at him and said, I don't think we get $5 for it in the yard sale. So he wanted to prove her wrong, so he went to this pawn shop, and the guy at the pawn shop offered him $200 on the spot for it. And he thought, well, if he's going to give me $200 right now, and he didn't even look that good, it must be really worth more. And he was smart enough just to take it back, and then, no, I don't think I'm going to sell it today. And he actually, long story short, he auctioned this thing off on eBay, got $2,000 for it. She's going to throw it away. She was going to throw it out, and here's the point of that story. It reminds us that the value of something is not determined by what it is, but what somebody's willing to pay for it. Right? There's stuff they sell on eBay every day that may not be worth anything. I thought it'd be funny. How many of y'all have seen the movie Jingle All the Way? Right? I thought, man, I'm going to get one of them Turbo Man dolls. And I thought, man, I'll just do about $5, put it on my tree in my office so people come in and see it, people who know the movie would laugh. You know how much they want for one of those? The cheapest one I could find was like $500. It's a cheap piece of plastic. But people, listen, I saw some that had sold for thousands of dollars. People were willing to pay that for it. And so all of a sudden it's more valuable. If I had one, I would sell it tomorrow, right? John 3:16 tells us, for God so loved the world that he sent his one and only Son. If you're a Christian, that says that you're worth so much that God sent Jesus. Well, to reconcile you with him. How valuable are you that God would send Jesus? That's why we celebrate Christmas. God sent him, not only did he send him, he sent him the way he did. Not just a birth, not just a perfect life, but a willingness to surrender his life on a cross. And then his glorious resurrection and all that comes after that. It's all the story God's been telling us since the beginning of history, all the way through. And he's still telling that story today. And all that we've said all season long, all these Christmas stories and Christmas illustrations, the story of Christmas is just part of a bigger story. It is a big part. It is sort of one of the main scenes. It's a pivotal point. It's in the story God's telling us, it's the linchpin that holds it all together. But it's just the beginning. God is still the director of history. History is his story, right? And we have to understand that he's still telling the story today. He's still auditioning and casting people to play roles in it. And the question this morning that you need to ask yourself is, are you willing to play the role that God assigns to you? Or are you going to miss a blessing and refuse to play the role that he cast you? This is not a fairy tale. This is not like other stories that you might hear. This is true. And God didn't come just to show us. He came to show us the truth. He came to show us who he was so we could relate. He came to connect with us in a real way. He came to live and die and pay for my sins and yours so that we can have eternal life someday. This is not just a story, it's the truth. Watch this video.
It has been called the greatest story ever told. Many have heard the story of Christmas and how Jesus was born. But why was he born? The morning after Jesus was born, Joseph may have rose from an exhausted sleep and seen the ominous sight of Herod's palace, casting a shadow towards Bethlehem. Did he realize the symbolism? In the same way, this child was born in the shadow of this evil empire trying to find and kill him. This little infant he had delivered with his own hands the night before would one day stretch out his hands to deliver us all. His purpose was certain. Jesus came to deliver us. But there's more to this story. Jesus did not come only to save us. He also came to tell us the truth. As a young boy, he was found in the Jewish temple, speaking with the teachers there and asking them questions to draw out the truth. As he grew up, Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and all people. He spent his days in worship and studying the scriptures. He knew who he was and why he had come. Jesus came to tell those in his community the truth. Jesus went to the local synagogue one Sabbath day. Opening the scroll, he began to read from the book of Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news. That day, Jesus declared he was the Messiah the people had been waiting for. Jesus came to tell those who worship God the truth. He started to travel. People had never heard anyone talk about God this way or seen such amazing miracles. Some towns didn't want him to leave. His response to them affirmed his mission. I must preach the good news of the kingdom of God in other towns too, because that is why I was sent. It was clear to see Jesus came to tell people who did not know God the truth. The most repeated phrase Jesus said was, I tell you the truth. The group of men who traveled with Jesus had heard him say those words countless times. As their time together drew to an end, Jesus summed up the message he wanted them to carry to the world. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. Commissioning them to tell others, Jesus came to tell the disciples the truth. Tried and tortured, Jesus hung on a cross, moments away from crossing into the unknown realm the people of this world had never seen. As a man dying next to him uttered but a few words of belief, Jesus responded, Today you will be with me in paradise. That sentence still echoes through the hearts of all who hear it, resounding that Jesus came to tell those about to die the truth. He was placed lifeless in a tomb carved out of a cave, much like the one in which he was born. For 3 days, there was only silence. From the cave to the grave, every claim Jesus made was now on trial, and death demanded a verdict. Jesus didn't just claim to tell the truth, he proved it. As suddenly as Jesus broke through eternity and entered the world as a man, he broke through death and rose again. Jesus came to prove he is the truth. The next page is yours. What you believe is yours to choose. If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. As you decide, may you heed these words. Jesus came to tell you the truth.
He was the truth. He came into our world the way he came, on purpose. This is our time of response. It's not a conclusion. It's not the last song. It's a time for you to respond to God. Not to me, not to this message, not to this church. You respond between you and God. I don't know what God's calling you to do this morning. Maybe you don't know him in a personal way. Maybe this whole Christmas thing to you is confusing because you know that there's one true story, but at the same time, you're not sure you're part of it. I encourage you, come let me talk to you. Renee's over here, she'll talk to you. We have other people who will talk with you. If you need to understand the true meaning of Christmas, come let us explain to you how Jesus came, lived, and died to pay for your sins. He is the one true life. Maybe this morning you've known that message for a long time, but you're not living in a way that demonstrates it. Maybe God is challenging you to take the rest of this Christmas season and make it about him. To focus on the true meaning of Christmas. To focus on how you can connect your heart with his heart. And how that can make a difference for the whole year to come and the rest of your life. Whatever God's leading you to do right now is the time to do it. I encourage you to stand with us as the band begins to sing, as they begin to play. And you just worship God. If he moves on your heart to do something, the altar's always open as usual. If you need to pray with somebody, just come and let us know. I'll be open.
The Savior sing, your strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me your all in all. Jesus made me whole. Oh, to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Lord, now indeed I find your power and yours alone can change the leper's eyes and melt the heart of stone. Jesus made me whole. All to him I owe. Sin
y'all want to meet this family in Clarksville, so y'all are stuck with me for announcements this morning. I'll try to make it brief and to the point. I've already preached, so I'm not going to get long-winded. Our Christmas Eve service is tomorrow night. I encourage you, if you've never been to one, come this year. You're going to find it a blessing. It's at 9:30 tomorrow night. The reason we do it at that time is it's late enough that your family doings ought to be done, and it's early enough that you can still get your kids home and get them in bed just in time to make them tired and fall asleep so you can do what you need to do the rest of the night, or go sleep yourself, whatever you want to do. So I encourage you, take time during the Christmas season, especially Christmas Eve, to worship Christ. We're going to have a communion service. The band's going to sing some songs. I'm not going to preach very long. We're just going to have a quick introduction to communion, and then we'll have a wonderful time of celebrating the true meaning of Christmas. Another reminder, life groups will not meet today. Give you some more time to spend time with family. So there's no life groups after the service today. Next Wednesday and the next Wednesday after that, we won't have Wednesday night services either. We'll start back after the new year gets kicked off for good. So no services this 26th or January 2nd as well. January 5th, all the men are invited to our breakfast we're having in the fellowship hall at 8 a.m. There's a sign-up sheet at the next level table, and Calvin says, please sign up. And if you're going to bring a guest, which we encourage you to do, bring a guest, but just put down your name plus however many guests you're bringing. We're going to have a guy share his testimony there that's a wonderful thing, and it won't be long, and it won't be any high-pressure thing. It'll be a great time for you to bring a guest who doesn't know Christ and is willing to come to, may not come to a church service, but is willing to come to a free breakfast. So it's not going to cost you anything. The church is paying for that. And then after that, we'll start back our men's Bible study on Thursday mornings after that breakfast is over. But I encourage you to sign up for that on the next level table in the back. What are you going to do with the message today? The next page of the video set is yours. How are you going to live your life differently based on the fact that Jesus came and died for you, and he wants to cast you in the role he has planned to do? He has great and awesome plans for your life. Are you going to do it your way, or are you going to do it his way? Let's pray together, and you'll be dismissed. Dear God, I thank you so much for the opportunity we have not just to live life free from sin, God. To live life not just free from the penalty of sin so we go to heaven someday, but God, you came to give us life and life to its fullest starting now. If we'll just trust you. Lord, you came to show us a better way to live for the rest of our time here, a way to make a difference, a way to be used by you to reach more people for you. God, I pray as we connect our heart to your heart, that you would also help us to connect to your message and spread it around the world, especially here at Christmas.